the original conception of what a film is and where it's to be seen has now changed so radically that we may have to say, okay, let's say there's a certain kind of film that's made here. There might be obviously virtual reality films. There's holograms. There's all sorts of things that are going to be coming that we don't really know. So in effect, one thing that will never something that should always be protected as much as possible, and I think will always be there, is a communal experience. And I think that's best in a theater. Now, homes are becoming theaters too, but it's a major change, and I think one has to keep an open mind. You know, there's no doubt like this seeing a film with an audience is really important.
Welcome to Funky Flicks Film Review's news segment and news segment, The Movie House, where we'll discuss the state of cinema and any movie news I see relevant. Today I want to talk about the cinema-going experience. Will it return in strength? Or after a year of stumbles and near misses by the industry itself, and all of us sat at home watching anything we could possibly want to, has, in a way, the coronavirus claimed cinema as one of its victims. Here in the UK, cinemas reopen officially on May 17th. And, you know, I'm sure there's many of us will want to rush out and see big, broad scope entertainment films on the biggest screen possible. And equally, we'll want to watch traditional standalone films like Nomadland in, you know, the warm embrace of the cozy, if, you know, something overpriced, independent cinema. And frankly, I'm just looking forward to being back in the dark again, you know, smothered in surround sound and bathed in dreams made of light and peppered with spilled popcorn. You know, I'm even looking forward to the inevitable argument I'm going to have with that asshole who won't turn off his fucking phone. But does everyone feel the same way? Earlier this year, the Oscars, which came across like a bad Vegas floor show, had, you know, record low viewing numbers. Now, that's not necessarily saying anything, given that the films that the Oscars deem worthy of prizes are not, or, you know, whether they make them, whether Hollywood makes them themselves or they're, you know, from elsewhere, they're not necessarily the films that that Hollywood makes to win box office. And, you know, that might not mean anything, but is the lower viewing figures for this, you know, the most famous film festival in the world, indicative of a loss of interest in the, you know, movie house going experience? Well, let's think about that. I mean, moviegoers have been, you know, falling in numbers for years. Like, there's been fewer people going to the cinema for years. And people just aren't getting what they want. Let's say people 35 and upwards are sick of watching, you know, they want to see something fresh. They want to see something, you know, traditional standalone cinema. They want to go for a cinematic experience rather than more movies that are sequels and prequels and midquels and reboots of comic books and, you know, bygone franchises. Well, actually, there are fellas in there, you know, there is specifically a large number of blokes in their 40s who only want to see that stuff. I mean, that's all they want to see, just so they can go to the cinema, hate it, and spend their entire time throwing their Star Wars figures and toy Ben Afflecks at the screen. But most people in that age group and upwards, say 35 and upwards, just want to see something new. Not everyone wants to see art house cinema, but, traditional standalone cinema, maybe not super genre, just something interesting, something to experience in a movie house. That's what they want. And then you get another sort of set of people, from teens and then 20s and then maybe 30-somethings. And, if they're not in the recycling demographic, if they're not in the catchment area of teenage boy wanting to see fast cars, or they're not, enraptured by the latest comic book thing, or don't want to see the latest Star Wars thing or whatever, they just don't go. If there's nothing there for them, what's the point? It's going to stay at home and watch superior content streamed at home. And that isn't entirely the fault of it's not really the fault of the streaming services themselves. They're just making good stuff. Disney in particular seem to want us all back in the movie house after our, involuntary time away, as illustrated by this somewhat shameless ad for kind of boasting ad for more stuff.
I love being with people. It's the most incredible thing in the world.
What are you doing? Oh, this is nice.
That world may change and evolve, but the one thing that will never change, we're all part of one big family.
Is Stan Lee now the dead David Attenborough of the MCU?
On your left.
I see. It's okay when this lot films in the cinema.
But I'm done running from my past. We have unfinished business.
Who's we?
So that's a mid-call, right? Is that a mid-call? Would you call?
When you love something, you fight for it.
We're the ones who changed everything.
Okay. Who the fuck are the Eternals? Okay, those are movie titles. Show me a clip or something. And if we don't see it at the movies, we'll stream it. Of course, the problem is Hollywood seems to be making films largely for the ever-growing Chinese market. Now, Chinese moviegoers, who are, seem to be a huge part of what a lot of these films are, who these films are aimed at and what these films are, built for. They seem to really enjoy American-made spectacle. But what they want from that are big explosions and fart jokes. If they're going to watch some nuanced, rich cinema feel, they're going to watch something that's Chinese and or nearby regionally made, something they actually relate to on some level. And that creates for everybody else, who isn't a teenage boy or a 45-year-old nerd dude or Chinese people, and a few other demographics, but they're very specific sets of demographics, and anyone outside of those is kind of almost excluded. There is, of course, another problem. Ticket prices. Cinema ticket prices have gone up astronomically, at least in the last 10 years. Well, since 2009, really. Especially with fads like 3D, which really never, ever appealed to me because I would get really sore eyes after it. It was really uncomfortable. I didn't see the point. Or the other big, experience screen thing that they charged a huge amount of money for was IMAX. I really like IMAX because it's just a big screen. It's a bigger screen. I like a bigger screen. But, that is until I recently found out, thanks to the recently released Snyder Cut, the natural format for IMAX is what happens when some idiot films something with their smartphone the wrong way up. By the way, Christopher Nolan is still the master of that format. As far as I'm concerned, Tenet might not have made much sense, but it looked good. Jesus, what? The fucking cat still here? The crazy thing about ticket prices is that when you get to the independent cinemas, they're just as bad and in some cases worse. And that's because it's the only way they can afford to stay open. And in many ways, they're the only places showing proper independent cinema, what we would call, in some cases, art house cinema or standalone cinema, films that aren't part of a tentpole franchise or a huge event, that are just, proper storytelling, just ordinary storytelling. There's nothing wrong with those films, those bigger movies, but these are the only places that you get a absolute certain distribution of, traditional cinema. A ray of hope for me, though, is that, in the grand scheme of things, the medium of the moving image, film, cinema, it's still new. It's still an evolving art form. And it's only, barely over 100 years old. It's 110, 120 years old. It's still evolving, still growing, and, this sort of stall in Western cinematic thinking, it's only a blip. A few years back, the likes of Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino, and it was Spielberg in on this as well, there was a bunch of different, traditionalist filmmakers were concerned about the diminishing reality of celluloid film stock over digital options. To me, the greater loss would be the loss of the movie house itself, or at the very least the loss of the movie house as an affordable option for the average person. To me, that would be a greater tragedy to the medium itself. But let's imagine it's not all bad news for the movie house, because there are some original films coming out. I'm going to go off and see Nomadland in a couple of days, which I've heard that's pretty good.
I'm Fran. Please watch our movie on the largest screen possible, and one day, very, very soon, take everyone you know into a theater, shoulder to shoulder, in that dark space, and watch every film that's represented here tonight. We give this one to our wolf.
And of course, next month you've got The Father, Anthony Hopkins' Oscar-winning performance, about a man with dementia, who's suffering from dementia, that will probably have me questioning my own sanity. And Ben Wheatley is coming back with a film called In the Earth, which seems like a kind of psychological horror in the woods, maybe with an element of a ecological horror. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I've just seen the trailer. I don't know much else about it. There is a fun-looking Irish comedy horror coming out called The Boys from County Hell, where these bored Egypts knock over a tomb and unleash a vampire on their town and have to stop him before the entire town is destroyed. And I don't think that's getting a theatrical release. I think it's probably streaming, but that's coming out in the next couple of months, and I think it looks like good crack.
Oh, come on, what are we supposed to do about this?
two big genre films headed for the multiplex, original genre films, not a continuation of anything, but something new, is Those Who Wish Me Dead with Angelina Jolie, which is directed, I think, by the guy that wrote Hell and High Water, and he co-wrote this, so that could be interesting. Then you've got Bob Odenkirk's Nobody, the kind of alternative kind of John Wick, but not John Wick kind of thing, which looks a lot of fun.
I'm nobody.
Obviously, I'm just talking about what's coming out in the next couple of months, but, beyond that, there are a lot of original films coming out, standalone, traditional cinema, and a lot of sequels, prequels, reboots, all of that. But of the continued narratives that I am looking forward to seeing, the big budget continued narratives that I am looking forward to having a look at is The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, because just, that was good crack the first time around. How bad could it be? A Quiet Place 2, it's, I'll tune in for that. And Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Call it fate. Call it luck. Call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason.
I imagine for a time people will be spilling and flooding back into cinemas to make up for lost time and reclaim yet another thing they felt they were deprived. But after the initial enthusiasm wears off, will they keep coming back, or will their sofas lure them back to online content? Hopefully they will keep coming back, and if they do, then maybe the movie house isn't dead yet. And with that thought in mind, I'm going to leave you here with Giuseppe Tornatore's Cinema Paradiso, the 1988 film, which is an ode to cinema itself. And the film takes place over a number of years, but this particular clip is in 1949 Sicily, where the town wished to see this very, very popular comedy, but not all of them can get in. And those who are, interestingly enough, not allowed, because it's full, the reel has to go off the following day, they may never see this film, and they're baying at the door. And the projectionist, Alfredo, decides they think they want to come in, but he's going to perform cinema magic and give them what they really want. And whatever flick you end up watching, and wherever you end up watching it, I hope it's worth talking about.
Ma che cosa ci posso fare io?
Aspettate giorni, e poi ci hanno mandato via!
Una folla non pensa, non sa quello che fa. Questo lo diceva il grande Spincertrasi in furia. Allora, che dici? Ce lo facciamo vedere il film a queste povere pazze?
Magari, ma come? Si può fare?
Vedo che voi non volete credere alle mie parole, ma ai vostri occhi dovrete credere. E ora alza le chiappe da quel dannato sgabello.
Non sapete che è gelosissimo, che esasperato, che armato.
Attento. Abracadabra. Guarda dall'altra parte. Affacciati alla finestra e guarda, ragazza.
Alfredo è bellissimo!
Da via! Un cinematografo!
Bravo Alfredo!
Grazie Alfredo, grazie!
Ma che succede? Ma che vuoi? Dale, un cinema!